Well, we have some active weather ahead for the next few days. Severe weather season seems to be kicking into gear again across the plains as we've seen lots of storm reports and the potential for more of those as we head into the middle of this week. Here's a look at storm reports over the past 72 hours. We have not seen a map quite this colorful in a while. A lot of wind reports here across parts of the Ohio River Valley down in the south, and some rare tornado reports for this season in Minnesota as well. And we could see some more active weather over the coming days. In fact, we have a moderate risk of severe storms, small area today, but potent. Upper level ridge still dominating the center of the continent, but there are ripples in that ridge. All these little yellow X's denote short waves in the atmosphere, we call them. Basically little ripples that create instability. The first of those will move through parts of the central and southern plains today, and then another one tomorrow across parts of the northern plains in the Midwest heading into Minnesota, and then that whole area will focus storms a little farther east. But either way, a little more activity than we've been seeing here over the last several weeks. Small but potent moderate risk here across southern Kansas, right on the border of Oklahoma. We're looking at a pretty likely threat of high wind gusts and large hail, and similar thing here in western Nebraska. Whenever you have these hatched areas from the Storm Prediction Center, that's a high probability that we're going to see either in this case some very large hail, we're talking 2 to 3 inch size hail, but also a very high chance of some strong wind gusts, 80 to 100 mile per hour winds. We're already seeing some high levels of what we call downdraft CAPE. So you think of CAPE where we measure how much buoyancy or instability there is in the atmosphere. Well, downdraft CAPE is kind of the reverse. How fast can air plummet to the surface and create those downburst winds. So we're going to see initially some discrete supercells develop late today into western Kansas. These could be some strong cells with large hail, maybe some tornadoes initially, and then kind of converge here into a mesoscale convective system or a derecho, and those could produce some very high wind gusts. Models kind of all honing in right on that Kansas-Oklahoma border. These are some wind gust swaths from the North American model in particular, and some of these are 90 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts. So we're looking at some nasty wind there potentially. And then that area of moisture that we have kind of bottled up to the south here from that high pressure that's cooled things off for the weekend for the upper Midwest, that's going to start to fill in. We're going to see the humidity, these stickier dew points, the oranges, those are 60s and 70s dew points, start to fill in here more all the way up into Minnesota as we head into tomorrow. So we're going to have moisture surging north, and that will allow that threat of severe weather to move north too. Not a particularly impressive risk, but we have a slight risk over the Twin Cities and then also into parts of Mississippi. And in particular for Minnesota, well, not very impressive this season it is, because we haven't had many of those. And then that will shift towards Chicago, northern Illinois, western Indiana as we head into Wednesday. So a couple of chances of severe weather for areas that haven't been seeing much of it. In particular, Minnesota, the upper Midwest, and the northern plains. The threat tomorrow is primarily a wind and large hail threat for Minnesota as well. Can't ever rule out some isolated tornadoes in these situations, but in particular, those are the threats that we're looking at. Looks like we'll have some scattered showers and thunderstorms early in the day, and then some strong storms popping up with redevelopment late in the afternoon and early evening hours on Wednesday, right across east central Minnesota pushing east. There are some differences in the models though. The North American model in particular, much higher with the CAPE values or energy available for thunderstorms. The HRR is a little further east and not quite as impressive. So two different variables there that could really affect the outcome of where the severe weather happens. But we will have jet stream winds in the neighborhood and some shear to help organize those storms on Wednesday, which is something that hasn't been happening a whole lot here in the upper Midwest, finally getting a little bit more typical upper level pattern for this time of the year. So those differences are resulting in some different parameters. When we look at the significant tornado parameter, we get a little bullseye here right over the Twin Cities in south central Minnesota tomorrow, but the HRRR, which is further east because it's got those further east CAPE values, is definitely less impressive looking. But we've got a few chances of severe weather at least here over the next few days.